3, 2, 1. Mr. Devin, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
Very good. How are you weathering the storm out in Utah?
You know, it's not too bad, honestly. We never had like a state lockdown or anything, so
Oh, is that right? Eh?
yeah, so it hasn't been like horrible, but I'm not working right now, my full-time job. I got furloughed, so
Freak. Yeah, that's got to be. This is one of those things where overnight, nothing did anything wrong, but overnight, like 50% of the people lost their jobs. Like it's just.
yeah, it's insanity. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty insane. But hopefully things will get back in order soon. Your work, you've managed to make your career out in a climbing gym, I believe, right?
Yeah, so my full-time job, and I guess celebrated my 8th year working for the company that I work for. So we have 6 facilities across 3 states. But yeah, I've been climbing for 20 years at this point.
Wow.
And it's just another one of the things to add to the resume of outdoor activity things that I do. But
well, to be honest, you live in I've driven across Utah before. I'm all the way out east in Ottawa here in Canada, and you live in like outdoor paradise.
It's amazing. It really is. Like you can't get better than the diversity that Utah offers. Like granted, there's amazing opportunities throughout the whole country, and even you go north into Canada or like.
There's a lot of options, but Utah, like it's another planet. When I drove through it, when I came, because I was in Santa Monica across the country. So like Nevada, not Los Angeles, sorry. Las Vegas, and then I went up Arizona just a little bit, and then Utah, and then across the Rockies in Colorado. So I did all of that, and honestly, like out of all of them, by far, the craziest thing I've seen is Utah. Like just the landscape is out of this world. So when I drove through Utah to come back home, like for 12 years ago already, like it was another planet in terms of like, it's just so different than what you're used to looking at. You just never see that kind of landscape.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I love about being in Utah is that, sorry, I'm just trying to adjust this a little bit. So the thing that I love about being in Utah, especially where I live currently, is that I can drive anywhere 3 to 5 hours max, and I can be in like high alpine, really just high elevation, beautiful mountains, or I can be in the desert and have like desert canyons and the whole Moab area, but there's way more than what Moab offers, and it's just there's so much available that it's beyond amazing.
Yeah, it's beyond. I have a friend actually, Bryan Robitaille. He's a colleague of mine here in Ottawa, and he was actually on my 2nd episode of the podcast, and he's been going to Utah since the early 2000s.
Okay.
And every year he goes back. I think it's October, November when it kind of happens. And I think it's a time where there's not a ton of rain as well out your way. I think it's October that he goes. And he goes out there to canyoneer.
Man, I can only
all
imagine.
All out canyoneering. And it's so funny because he's just a guy that lives in Ottawa, but he's been going for 20 years now, every year. And the first year it started, let's go mountain bike in Moab, right? That's kind of the place that everybody's wants to go.
Right.
He goes there. He bumps into random people. For all the folks at home, if you haven't listened to that episode, Bryan is a great storyteller, first of all. But he's telling the story of him like literally going to coffee shops and bumping into the pioneers of canyoneering. Now, like the guys that created the sand anchor, he prototyped them with them in the canyons.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Out of nowhere, he'll tell you the stories of bumping into random people that have changed the landscape of canyoneering like you wouldn't believe it. And he's got them all on speed dial if he wants to. Like, he can just call them, and the stories are insane. But like, have you ever entertained? I know that there's a big division between climbers. I'm a climber myself as well. Like, I mean, you kind of have a job that I would have dreamed to have when I was younger.
Sure.
I climbed a decent amount when I was younger. I haven't in a while now, but I'm a climber, and I understand all the safety and you don't step on your rope, you don't drop your beaners. And then you have the canyoneers that are just like, it's just everything goes out the window, to be honest.
Yeah.
Have you ever entertained anything with canyoneering?
Yeah, I've done a little bit because it's so accessible where I'm at, but it's been a long time since I've done any canyoneering. I haven't done anything technical for years and years. But I mean, some of the hikes that I've done recently in the desert, I guess you could call it canyoneering. Like, there's been a little bit of, I did a route in Capitol Reef National Park, which I talk about Capitol Reef a lot because I adore that park.
It's like me and the Adirondacks. That's all I talk about. I'm literally wearing a shirt about it too.
But yeah, so this route that I did is called the Beehive Traverse, and I've got a video about it because I video my trips obviously, but if you have not seen that trip, like, it's worth your time because it's incredible. But there were aspects of that route that we were stemming, we were not like on our butts, scooting down slick rock and just trying to not get hurt, like with 30-pound backpacks on.
Is that the time that you went out with Mr. Becker and then Bryce and Amy and all that, or?
No, this was October of 2018.
Okay, so I'll have to look back. I don't know if I saw this specific one.
Yeah, Beehive Traverse. So
yeah. I don't think my wife would let me canyoneer.
Really?
Like, it just, oh man, well, at least, listen, I think there are safer routes and proper ways to do it with anchors. When Bryan comes over and tells us the stories of his canyoneering, like, you're talking like sand anchor, water anchor, all the way through. There's nothing. And he's like, we're practicing leave no trace. We don't drill holes in the canyon.
Right.
Like, we leave everything pristine behind. And he tells the story of doing, like, some of the canyons. I wish I knew them. Anyways, I'm not good enough to remember all the names, but like only like 2, 3, 5. Like, some of the cans he's done, he's like, when we did it, only 5 parties ever did it before us. That was ever recorded.
Oh, cool.
Like, yeah. Like, he goes into the remote places. So I think that it has a certain amount of, call it danger, if you will, risk.
Yeah. No, it totally does. And if you've ever seen somebody that has like a really proficient canyoneering resume, where they understand the technical skills required to do really technical canyons. They're on, in a lot of ways, like, they're building anchors off of things that never should have any kind of anchor built off of them. And the nice thing about those particular canyons and those routes is so few people are going to do them that it's kind of one of those things that you do it one time and you never go do it again on the really technical things. But there's plenty of canyons that you can go do that, like Neon Canyon, for example, in the Escalante area, is,
I think I heard of that one actually.
You rappel through this hole that drops down. The feature is called the Golden Cathedral.
Okay.
And it's probably one of the, if not the most popular canyon for people to do in that area. And if you're going to start canyoneering, you don't have to be doing super technical stuff to be able to like do a lot of canyons
and to enjoy them as well. Right?
Yeah.
And for all the folks at home too, like, canyoneering is a very specific activity because so my understanding of it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the entire landscape of Utah was carved by basically rainfall over like millions of years, right? So everything is carved down and the soil cannot absorb the water. So that created all of these canyons. But these canyons are made out of, I believe, sand rock.
Yeah, just sandstone, various different layers of sandstone.
So super slick. So once you go, and that's the kicker for canyoneering, at least the one that I understood from my buddy Bryan, is once you start going down, there's no way up. It's like being at the bottom of a pool with no water. There's nothing to grab on to come back up.
Right.
And because everything is carved by water, they all empty somewhere. They all open up at the end somewhere, right? So when you think about that for the climbers, because there's a ton of rappelling to be done, and sometimes like 150 feet long rappels, you can't leave your rope behind.
Right.
So you always have to be like, okay, well, when we go do this canyon, we have enough rope and we have enough to bring back, and that's when sand anchors and for, I don't want to be redundant, but for the folks at home, go listen to the second episode. He explains them all. It's really neat, the technology around it, but it's also kind of, it makes you wonder.
Yeah. It makes it difficult for governing bodies, which in like in the realm of climbing, there isn't.
No, same here in Canada.
There aren't people that are saying these are the laws and the rules of.
Correct.
And if you don't do this, then you're going to get in trouble. Like we have this issue at work where there is not a industry standard of how to belay. There is a standard that is taught by the AMGA that is kind of like the accepted standard, but no one has come out and said, if you are going to be climbing, this is the industry standard. If you don't do this, then these repercussions will come out of it.
Correct.
And like you said earlier with canyoneering, that's out that just is gone. Like, and it's often because in reverse to climbing, like you have a lot of anchors, or you're able to place anchors and easily remove them because you're on a rock face. But when you are doing 150 foot, 200 foot rappel in a canyon, they don't even want you to be leaving webbing behind that you use to create an anchor. So you're having to like really
scramble.
Yeah. So it's putting together pretty, I don't want to say sketchy, but potentially sketchy anchors that.
I think that's the best way to describe it. When someone describes to you a sand anchor, when he was telling me his water anchors prototypes that they were trying out with I don't know his name, the guy who invented them or the company or whatever it is. He's like, we were trying these out of garbage bags. like the early prototypes were insane. So it's just God, awesome. It's a different world. In a different life, I think, if I didn't have so many people worrying about me at home, it'd be the kind of stuff I'd be interested to try. But now, as I'm getting older and I'm only 32 now, it's like when I was 20, that would have been a lot more appealing to me.
Yeah.
Do you still manage to climb a decent amount?
To be honest, no. And
that's the problem when you work in the
industry. Well, it's not so much working in the industry. It's the fact that I've got two young kids. I've got a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and climbing. There are plenty of people that have kids that are successful climbers, and that is their thing, and they make it work. Like we have dozens of members at my work that is their life. Like. Their kids climb, and they're bringing newborns to the gym. They're taking newborns out to the crag. Like, that's just...
And that's cool.
Yeah, but that's not...
Didn't work out.
...necessarily what I want to be doing with my kids. And I've been climbing for so long at this point that... I don't know. I don't want to say I'm burnt out, but my passions currently are in other places. So
well, look at this. This was my first love right here. So I know the feeling.
So I mean, after 20 years, I climbed at not like an elite level, but a pretty advanced level. I mean, I was climbing
Of course.
V10, 513 for those that may understand that, but like I put a lot of work into climbing hard, and then I got married. My wife isn't super interested in climbing, which isn't a reason to not do it, but for just like a tick list of things that have come together, of other passions have kind of taken over, and I'm more interested in like backpacking, for example, all consuming right now. Yeah.
For sure. And I mean, like, let's be honest, and this becomes extremely real once you have your firstborn child.
Yeah.
It's time. Time is the most valuable resource you have.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you're an enthusiastic person like I am, you just don't have enough time to go and do everything. Like I still love to climb and will go the odd time, but I just don't have enough time to commit to becoming really better. So every time it's just like, every time I don't know how you guys, most of the stuff I'll do nowadays is just the bouldering. It's just simpler, right? You go there and every time I do, like, it's all color coded in terms of how easy to hard it gets out here. And I'm usually in the first, like, on the third one out of like 7. I just haven't moved up in so long. I was better before, and now it's just like, it's still fun. I still really enjoy it. It's just, there's just not enough time.
Right. Yeah. And once you add a second kid to it, I don't know how many kids you have, but yeah.
2. I have a second kid as well. And so they're pretty interested into climbing, to be honest. And at one of the gym that we have here, we have these, I don't know how they're called, but they're these boxes that are auto belay. So when you fall, they catch you. And they slowly bring you down, right? So what's neat about those setup, and they're decent walls, I don't know how high, but they're the regular walls that the adults will climb, is they'll have like 5 routes next to each other. So what I would do, I haven't gone maybe in 6 months now, but what I would do is let them, first of all, it's nice for them to be able to just go on their own, but when they would get stuck somewhere, I could climb the route next to them and help them along, and literally climb side by side with them.
That's rad. So
that's been actually a pretty fun way to explore climbing. The bouldering for them doesn't work all that much. Like, it just it's got to be routes, and then like my oldest she's 8. She might be 45 pounds. She's such a tiny kid.
Super tiny.
So super tiny. So when she wants to climb like a harder wall or anything like this, I'll just belay her, and I'll just pull her up with my ATC. I mean, it's 45 pounds. So I can help her up quite a bit, but it's fun. It's definitely a fun one, but a little bit like you, for us, it's just like, as long as it involves sleeping in a tent, it's usually what we're going for. Yeah. And I think you've been camping a decent amount since your kids are fairly early. You have 2 as well, right?
2 kids.
And how old?
4 and 3.
4 and 3. So I started heavily camping with them when Rosie was 2.5 and Chart was 2.5. So you're right in that pocket when I started. But I think you started earlier than that.
Yeah, like I'm just hesitating because I'm trying to go back to exactly when.
Yeah.
We were hiking with my oldest.
Of course, yeah.
When she was a newborn, like her first overnight camping trip, she was 6 months old. She was born in like the fall, so it didn't make sense at that time to like, okay, we have a newborn, let's go camping when it's freezing outside. Like, that's just not a good idea. So we waited until she was 6 months old. We took her out and just had a blast. It was awesome. And all the time, like, we're actually going to head out and go find a nice secluded place and go camping this coming weekend.
I'm just about to go as well. I have a decent amount of crown land around me that I could have access to. So I'm thinking of doing a first tarp, like with the kids and fire to keep us warm. Just like grill steaks, keep it simple.
Yeah,
but
that's awesome.
It'll be fun, but But at least like it's not going to be in a tent fully. It'll be kind of like, it'll be a new experience for the kids because they're definitely seasoned out in the backcountry by now. See, I think and for all the folks at home, you have your own podcast, which is the Backcountry Exposure.
Well, so YouTube is Backcountry Exposure. The podcast
Correct.
is the Backpacking Experience.
The Backpacking Experience, that's right. And on there, one of the latest episodes, you've talked a lot about how you climbed a ton of not climbed, but you had plans of hiking a ton of 1,000 footers.
Yes.
So I would encourage all the folks at home to go listen to that because it is a really cool story that you have. But yeah, for me, I don't know if that's what. So for me, when the kids were born, I was super young. I was like 23 when Charlotte came into our lives. I was disorganized, not ready necessarily for all of this, and
still trying to figure things out.
Yeah, literally trying to figure things out, and things have worked out for us. We worked hard, but I mean, we started from far, but it took me about, like I said, 3 years to kind of get organized. Before and that would be the longest hiatus of me not camping, the first 3 years of the kids being born. And it's not necessarily because of the kids, and mine are 11 months apart, so they're like back to back, right? It's not necessarily because of the kids. It's just like, early 20s, life is a little different. You're trying to figure it out. Because I'm a little bit like you. I was introduced to the backcountry. My first backpacking experience in the Adirondacks, I was 12.
Oh, wow.
So like for me, like
it's nice and young.
It's been part of my life, but like for 3-4 years when I had kids, right when they came out, I didn't do anything. And it's not necessarily because the kids were holding me back or anything like this. It's just, life was a bit different. But then eventually I was like, okay, now I have these kids. What am I going to do? Am I going to put them in gymnastics, which is all these things are great. Like there's nothing wrong with any of them. I was just trying to figure out my thing, right? It's like I could put them in gymnastics, go sit in bleachers, Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, maybe some hockey, organized sports, or we can just go wild and just, you know what I mean? And we can just go and explore them. And that's kind of the thing that we ended up doing, right? And I diversified over time between like, I think the first time obviously was a car camping experience, then to hikes, and and then Charlotte climbed Cascade Mountain. She hiked Cascade Mountain when she was 3.5 years old in the Adirondacks, which is a 4,000 footer.
Yeah.
And overall, she hiked half of it on her own, the other half on my back, and then she came down half of it on her own, and the other half on my back sleeping. But like pretty cool experience for a 3-year-old to be above tree line, because that's one of the things about the Adirondacks that's sweet. You get some solid 360 above tree line views. And some wicked temperatures out there. So like, but I found for hiking, at least for me, whenever I talk about camping with your kids, I always tell everybody backpacking is by far the hardest, in my opinion, to do because they have to carry their own weight. And that's one thing that's harder, especially like my oldest is 45 pounds. Like she can't carry that much stuff on her back, right?
Well, and it's not only that, but it's like, how am I trying to explain this? If they're not potty trained, then the fact that you're carrying, I mean, it's just like carrying a wag bag.
Yeah.
You're carrying diapers out, and you've got to like diaper. Yeah.
No, it's well. Hey, I have experience. Listen, I have experience.
It's just like you could easily take a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old backpacking with you. Like there's nothing that says no, you shouldn't do that, or you can't do that, or it's impossible. Like you absolutely can do it, but to me it's a pick your battles situation where I would rather go car camping with kids that age and still
hike during the day.
Yes, and still have the same experience that you would get, because you're likely only going to hike maybe 3 miles at most, and you're probably more likely going to go a half mile to a mile, which lends itself to not very, at least where I live, not very many great options of places to backpack. And so I would rather find more wild camping, car camping places that allows the child to have more opportunity to just roam and spend time, because that's all a kid cares about they don't understand the concept of backpacking.
Yeah.
And on that podcast episode that you referenced, I get into this a little bit.
Yeah.
And my mentality, and the reason that I like, when my wife and I first started having kids, we said to each other early on that we're like, we love spending so much time outside. Mm-hmm. We're not going to allow having kids to slow us down from being able to do that.
Yeah.
And so it was like, we're going to do this regardless of whether or not the kid.
And what this does really is it just shifts your focus, right? Because the thing too is that like how can I say, like, especially in the YouTube world, right? Where you look at all these people through hiking and doing all these crazy stuff.
Yeah.
It's just about, and I can speak to that a lot in different camping trips. It's about shifting your mindset. It's about just adapting things so that they can work with the kids. I have personally gone on a 3-day bike packing trip with both of my kids. When Rosie was 2.5 years old, she wasn't potty trained yet. She was 24/7 in diapers. But
okay.
I had come up, and when I say you got to get out of your own way and come up with solution and look at it differently, like first of all, forget ultralight. All concept of weight goes out the window. And you just don't even address it. Move on to the next thing. But what I had figured out is I took my mountain bike, and behind it I had a double chariot.
Okay.
Like a Cougar double chariot.
Yeah.
And then behind that, I had found a way to MacGyver a double trailer bike.
Oh, wow.
So all it was some kind of seat post that I had managed to kind of attach at the back, and then the trailer bike was holding on to the seat post. So I would have both the kids riding at the back. Rosie can even hit the pedals. Okay.
Nice.
And then
That's
I had
awesome.
I had all the gear in the chariot, and I would just kind of rotate it. So, like I would take a bag and strap it to the trailer bike and have them sleep when it was nap time and do that kind of stuff. And
That's
you don't
awesome.
go
super cool.
You don't go very far, but like and that particular bike packing trip, I actually just posted 2 episodes of it not long ago on my YouTube channel, where we traveled 100 kilometers. Now, fast forward 4 or 5 years later, it's a lot different now.
Yeah.
But where we, the bike packing trip, it's an old railroad that they took apart, so there's no climbs. It's like
Nice.
4%, 5% max of incline, and it goes through all the northern villages of an area here in Quebec where I live, and it's kind of, you go through all these beautiful old villages, and there's campgrounds along the way. So that's kind of how we do it. So
rail trails are awesing.
They are
for that reason, because they're historical. Like, they put you in places that they're not wild in the sense of being really far away from things, but that's awesome.
And bike packing, for me, and canoe camping for people that really want to get their kids out into the backcountry, and to car camp, it's fine, but you are still next to the car. To be like 2-3 days away from your car, it's a whole different mindset as well, right? Because if the kids get hurt, if someone gets bitten by something that they shouldn't be bitten by, like a bee, and they're allergic, you don't know yet. It's a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
But if you want to experience those, canoe camping and bike packing, if you're willing to MacGyver a couple of things, you're gonna have a really fun experience, because the kids don't have to carry their gear.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I wish in Utah there was more opportunity for like kayak touring or canoe trips and that kind of stuff. That is,
well, you can't have everything.
There's, I mean, it's not like being up in Quebec, there is miles and miles and miles of water all over the place.
You can throw a rock into a pond from here and just keep moving along. Like, it's just, Have you ever been up here?
So I've been into Quebec on accident.
Tell us the story, Devin.
So this was, this switches gears 100%, but I was in Vermont as a missionary for my church.
Okay.
And This was before passports were required in Canada.
Yeah. So that's pre 9/11 then.
No, it was 2007.
Okay, I thought everything
Yeah.
changed on that date. Okay.
Yeah,
2007. Okay.
I don't know, but passports weren't required. I think it was 2009 that
Okay,
they changed,
something like
but
that.
regardless. So me and this other missionary were driving in just the very northern tip of Vermont.
So beautiful up there.
It's incredible. Just
Yeah. Yeah. The landscape is insane.
would love to go back to Vermont. And we ended up on this dirt road trying to find these houses because in the church they will, if you get on the website, you can ask for church material, and then missionaries are the ones that would go to your house to deliver that material as like proselyting basically, and try to share a message. And so we were trying to deliver some of this material to one of these people that requested it. And we ended up on this dirt road, and this was before like you had GPS and navigation stuff. So we're just like going along, and I kid you not, everything went from miles and English to French.
Yeah,
and kilometers. And I was like, we are not in the United States anymore.
So I guess there were no what do you call those? Not boundaries.
There was no fences. There was no gates. There was nothing.
You just
there.
drove through.
Yeah, but this was literally as like backwoods Vermont and just off the beaten path. We were super far away from highways, interstate, and why we didn't just turn around and go back the way we came, I don't know. I mean, I was 19, 20 years old at the time, so I think we were just like trying to explore and be like, ooh man, now we're in Canada, what do we do? And
what do we do?
So
we can drink here.
so we ended up finding a paved road that led us back to a main road, and that brought us to just like a border checkpoint, and they stopped us obviously, and the border agents were like, how did you end up here and not ever get checked in by somebody? And we're like, we literally were driving on a dirt road 50 miles to the east. Like,
best answer to a border patrol ever.
and they're like, well, and what makes the story even better is we're driving in Vermont with a car that's registered in Maine, and he had an Idaho driver's license and I had a Utah driver's license.
Nice.
So it's like, you're in Canada, Utah driver's license, Idaho driver's license, driving a car registered in Maine that's registered
Shipment
to the
was
church.
dropped for sure.
So once they saw all of that and we explained ourselves and we had our like name badges on as missionaries, they were like, okay, just.
Well, what else are they gonna do? Like, plus, I mean, like, you would have crossed when you came back to the United States. You would have hit your own border. They would have, right? You didn't hit the Canadian borders.
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're just they'll let you back in.
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
they were like, what the heck?
This stupid country doesn't have their shit together.
Yeah.
That's funny.
No, but
so that's your experience.
There's another place up there that I've wanted to go to for a long time. One of my high school friends, her dad is a legit mountain man, and their family has property, and I can't even remember the name of the lake, but it's like Lake
Tremblant, maybe?
Starts with a T.
Tremblant?
No, Timanouski or something like that.
Timskamine? I don't think that's a lake. Okay. Is it a big lake or is it like... man, there's millions of lake out here, so...
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah. Well, while you look for that, the border of Quebec and Vermont is an absolute beautiful border. First of all, for anyone who's traveling out there, it's just absolutely insane. And funny story, I don't know if you know of that, but these are all called the Eastern Townships.
Okay.
Along the way, did you find the lake?
I am looking really quick.
Okay.
Everybody's probably like, why are you typing? This is important information.
Yeah, this is important information. So I don't know if you know the history a little bit of the Eastern Township, which is basically the area on the Canadian side of the border.
Okay.
But there a lot of these people in that place will be referred to as the Royalist. So on Independence Day in the States, when that whole thing happened, I don't know exactly the date because I'm not that educated, but a lot of people were royal to the Queen still in the UK. So they just crossed the border. They're like, they weren't in agreement with the independence of the United States. So they crossed the border over to Quebec. And they're all called the Royalists, and it's actually quite Anglophone right on that border because of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can get around in English very easily around there. And keep in mind that in Canada, Quebec is the only we don't have states, they're provinces. It's the only province that is like 100% French, Francophone. But you could live your entire life on that border without speaking French. You'd do fine.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's awesome.
But,
okay, I found it. So, so this guy, his name is Scott Sorensen.
Yeah.
He's like a legit mountain man.
Okay.
But his family has property up on the Chippewa River.
Okay. Chippewa.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that river. Where? If you zoom out, there's like of Google Maps, do you see any like towns or cities close by?
Oh, let's see. The big lake that the property is next to is Lake Timiskaming.
Yeah, Timiskaming. That's what I said.
Okay,
earlier,
okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So
I don't know how to pronounce that.
So that's in Abitibi-Témiscamingue. So that's like would Amos be close? It's called Amos in French, but Amos, like AMOS. If you look at the towns around, but it's probably 8 hours north from me, I would say.
Oh, okay.
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
But
so anyway,
it's beautiful country out here. It's not Utah, but for people that loves the water, like for me, like my YouTube channel is about the outdoors because I couldn't pick between hiking the Adirondacks and climbing the mountains, which I absolutely love, and like portaging trips, which it's kind of funny because compared to all the other backpackers in the niche, I never go out in the summertime backpacking because I just go on the lakes and I portage, which it's the canoe version of backpacking ultimately.
Yeah,
right? But then the winter season comes around and I'm just like in the whites in the Adirondacks. I just love the cold, harsh, just like freeze your toes off kind of situation.
So how? I'm trying to understand the geography a little bit better. Do the Adirondacks move north across the border from New York?
No, not at all. It's all in upstate New York, and it's just there. But what happens is, and same thing with the whites, but although that's part of the Appalachian, so it does, like the range does continue all the way to Newfoundland.
Right.
Technically speaking, but I live just outside of Ottawa, so I always say Ottawa because it's our national it's our capital, right? So it's just simpler for everybody to find where I'm at, and from there it's about 3.5 hours to the Adirondacks.
Oh, okay.
And about 4.5 to the whites, like to Mount Washington, and I'm about 2.5 hours to 3 hours to two like major portaging parks, like the Algonquin Park. And Parc La Vérendrye. The Algonquin Park was super popularized by good old Joe Robinette on YouTube. I don't know if you.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard of him. So he does all of his like long trips out there quite a bit, and so I'm kind of like I have nothing really where I'm at, but I have everything within 3.5 to 5 hours of driving. That's awesome. Which is to me that's a good deal.
So explain to me, maybe my boating education is not up to speed, but like explain to me portage. Is that different than portage, or are those?
No, okay, so portaging is the action of carrying your canoe on your back to go from lake to
Okay,
lake.
I'm just
It's
saying it
it's
differently.
this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, how do you guys say it then?
To like portage your boat.
Oh, that's okay. And maybe it's the French in me, but I'm pretty sure across when I think I'm pretty sure because most of my friends are Anglophones because I live right on the border to Ontario, and that's where I work anyways. Yeah. But we all say portaging, but it might be
and you're not the only person that I've heard say it that way.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So you'll refer to a canoe trip. It's like how can I explain this? It's like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square.
Okay.
Right. So you can go canoe tripping, and there might be portages along the way. But you can't go portaging if you don't portage. Right. So like for example with the kids, I have yet to portage. I have picked up camp on a lake and moved on to the next camping ground on the same lake, and that's one of the big tip I give to people that go out in the backcountry with the kids. You just got to do something. You got to keep people occupied. So as much work as it is to set up camp at one camp, just for one night and tear it down and to go to the next one, that's also the only thing you got to do all day long. Like there's nothing else to do other than just chilling and swimming, right?
So so
it gives purpose.
So does it constitute a portage if you put in on the lake, you paddle to a camping spot, and you never carry your canoe, but you clean up camp and move to another spot, but you never physically move your canoe out of the water
from lake. I don't think that's called a portaging. A portaging is literally a backpacking trail from one lake to another, or to a river or whatever it might be. And that's like that to me. I mean, I love backpacking as well, but I really love the winter aspect of backpacking, the technicality of it. For the summertime, nothing beats portaging to me. It's just so much fun to be out on the water, and you get the aspect of backpacking, and you do want the lightest stuff as much as possible to try. You know what I mean? You get to play with that game a lot, because a lot of the backpacking game and a lot of what people really enjoy about it is to tweak your system, right? Just trying to make it a little better, to be a bit more comfortable, but a bit more minimalist as you go along, and it's to play that game as well, plus the enjoyment of being outside. But like, there's a reason why there's a ton of YouTube channels out there that, that can manage to publish weekly videos. It's because there's a lot more than the actual action of going out.
Right. Yeah.
And you get that same thing in portaging. Very, very much so.
Which, I mean, because here in Utah we don't have a lot of that opportunity, just because there's not a lot of water.
Yeah.
But I guess where you're at, and even looking here on the screen right now, there's water everywhere.
That's all.
So yeah, I guess that makes sense. And my understanding, just the difference in the pronunciation of the word, I do understand how that works. And I've only ever done that one time in my college education. So I studied outdoor recreation management in college, and one of the required trip or experience classes was kayak touring. So we took 17-foot touring kayaks to Teton National Park and put in one lake, and then we had to portage, and it was only maybe a quarter mile for us to carry the boats from one lake to the next.
And kayaks they're a different thing a little bit. Like nowadays, some of the canoes, like they're 20 pounds.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that because while we were on that trip, there was an older couple that they had single person canoes, if that's the right term, but they were single person canoes.
I think they're called pack boats.
But they were carbon fiber boats.
Yeah.
And they were all like, yeah, look at what we got. Like, they were really nice, not pretentious, like jerk old people. But it was like, holy cow, it wasn't difficult at all for them to move their boats. And
No.
We were moving.
Because if you think about it, if you're going to go for 4 days, you could probably get away with about 35 pounds on your back. 40 max, depending on how you dial it in. And then you add, if you have one of those boats, you add like 20, 25 pounds on your back. So, but you're never going for 10 miles, right? So you might cross, like a big portage in the Algonquin Park is 3,500 kilometers. So if you think about it, like 0.6 mile is a kilometer. So you might be doing like 2.5 miles. That's a huge portage.
Gotcha.
Right. So having 50 pounds on your back, I go out in the Adirondacks in the dead of winter, and I carry 60 pounds on my back the entire time between my crampons, my axe, and everything. Like, it's just, there's no ultralight. Like, you can get to a better place in the winter, but it's still heavy.
Yeah.
So, and we do like 20-mile days, right? Or not, over a weekend we'll do like 30 miles. But anyways, so it's really manageable. It's being on the water, fishing. I know you like fishing, but like, you're just trolling as you go. Catch some fish, cook some fish on the fire at night. Nice. It's going for late night swims, just like super late night swims when the sun is setting. Or last summer we did a really cool experience, because you get to bring a bit more stuff when you're in your canoe, obviously.
Right. You got a big boat.
So you got a big boat, but we did keep it minimalist. But we brought a tarp, and we made a sweat lodge with it one night. So that was me and my buddies only, but we did a sweat lodge, and then after that we all went in the lake with our life jackets, obviously, so we don't drown. And then we're all swimming just to cool down, and I look at everybody and I'm like, dude, look up. And then just like, the sky in the desert where you're from is out of this world as well. But it was it was just such a cool experience to float on your back, only have your eyes out of the water because you're wearing your life jacket, so you're just floating on your back and you're staring at infinity above your head.
Wow.
And it was like a 360 view because you can see the horizon, like the tree line. It was,
God, that sounds amazing.
These are fun experiences, but you can only see that in the canoe camping. I've also slept in my canoe multiple times. So you tie it to a tree on shore, and then you put an anchor at the back, and then you just sleep underneath, and it's just it's quite awesome.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, that different opportunities depending on where you live, right?
And you make the best of them.
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking at right now is I love finding new things that allow me to jump into some kind of new piece of education within the outdoor industry, like collectively. So right now it's fly fishing.
Yeah.
And I've been fishing for a really long time, but fly fishing is an art.
Is it?
And there's a lot to learn from it. And I told my wife yesterday when I got back home from being on the river, and I didn't catch anything. And the week before, I had an amazing day on the river. I caught like 15 fish. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, every single day on the river when you're fly fishing is totally different. You never get this. It's never the same. The water temperature is different. The bugs that the fish are eating are different. And what time the hatch starts is different. It's so complicated, but it is one of those things that, because it's complicated,
you're drawn to it.
You're drawn to it because it is very difficult to master, and the education to figure it out over time is a very long period of time. How
old are you now?
I'm 32.
Okay, so so you're 88.
87.
Okay, I'm 32. Yeah, okay, so I'm 88.
Maybe I'm 33.
I've stopped counting after 25. Like, people ask me my age, I'm like, give or take. But my point with this is, I don't know if you've had the same kind of like a curve, but for me as a younger boy, I would avoid in a lot of ways things that are hard. And now the more I'm getting older, the harder it is to master, the more it'll grasp my attention.
Yeah. So the next big thing that I'm looking at doing, which I'm nervous at being in my early 30s is how much time can I actually devote to it? And am I going to, like, is my investment into the education and learning and being able to do it worthwhile? And what I'm looking at is pack rafts.
Oh, yeah.
So where Utah doesn't have a ton of water opportunities, we don't have big lake. I mean, okay, yeah, Utah has the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah. No,
But-
there's some. It's just not the same.
Yeah, it's just not the same. It's a desert.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking at is opportunities to bring rivers into my
Nice.
backpacking trips.
Nice.
And there's plenty of rivers that are in the desert area that you can easily pack raft. And even if I wanted to go up into Wyoming or
Yeah.
Idaho, there's plenty of opportunity for pack rafting up there to mix with backpacking. But it's gear and it's money and it's one more thing to add to the list of things
And time.
to do. And time, yeah.
right?
So it's like,
and sometimes
okay.
you actually have to work.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, if I'm going to spend $1,200 on a legit high quality pack raft,
Yeah.
then I got to get a paddle and then the PFD and then it's planning trips and having a backpack and the gear that supports being able to do those trips. It's
Yeah.
like,
And it's more time away from your family as well. And for the, at least for the foreseeable future, you're not going to be able to bring your kids along on those rivers, right? In those situations, most likely.
I don't mean this to sound cynical, but I'm not really concerned about that.
Okay, good.
Because I prioritize spending quality time with my family.
Yeah.
That my wife and I have an agreement that even though we're a family unit, we're still individual people.
Yeah.
And my kids are individual people. They deserve their own personal time. My wife deserves her own personal time to do what she wants to do. That doesn't have to do, it doesn't matter what it is. And then I get my personal time. As long as there's the balance of we are together as a family, or I went on a weekend backpacking trip 2 weeks ago. The next one I go on, I prioritize to take my kids, or I take one of my kids to go on a weekend car camping trip.
That's a cool way to put it together. I've often, explained to people, or I mean, it's not like I'm someone you should necessarily listen to, but I've often tried to explain to people, I think the way we need to look at this whole thing is that, before you were parents, you were a couple. Before you were a couple, you were two individuals. And in my opinion, the way you need to kind of work this up so that everything is healthy along the way in terms of your relationships, it should be that you focus on making sure that you're taking care of yourself, you take care of your partner, and then as partners, then you take care of your kids. And this seems to be, in my opinion at least, and in my experience, kind of the healthier way to do it so that you don't lose yourself along the way. And that you're happy.
And this sounds negative in the tone or the context, but I need to spend time away from you to be a better husband, to be a better father. To be a better friend.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's not just about being a husband or a father. It's you're literally the people that you spend your time with, they are your friends.
Of course.
And I'm a better friend to my wife when I realize when I spend time away from her that when I come back to her that she's my best friend. I want to hang out with her.
Yeah. When I get stuck on top of a mountain in the middle of the winter at -40, the first and you and I -40 meet, right? Celsius and Fahrenheit. That's where it meets. But the first people I think about when I'm up there and shit are just when things get really hard. Like this winter when we went to the Dax, it was like -35, -40. We climbed up like a haystack, and it was 60-mile wind, so 100 kilometers an hour wind. And 60-mile wind for the folks at home, that throws you off your feet. and we're
Yeah,
climbing a
that's not-
mountain. We're climbing a mountain with like our ice axe and our ice, like the big crampons that clips onto our mountaineering boots. And like one wrong step, you tumble. There's no trees. You just tumble down for a long time.
Right.
So my point with all this is you're absolutely right. Like the first people I think about when I'm out there, not that it sounds more dangerous than it is, to be honest. I think it just, if you take your time, like anything, like it's pretty safe. But at the same time, when it gets really hard, they are the first people I think about. And in that regards, you're absolutely right. And for me too, I'm you're probably very similar. I'm super introverted. Like this whole like lockdown thing, staying at home thing, for me, it hasn't been an issue at all. Like zero.
Yeah.
I mean, like I don't mind going. Like I can go out, but like the fact that I haven't seen any people, like now it's been 5 weeks. I think 5 weeks. Like I'm getting to a point where it's like, okay, looking forward to seeing people, but at the same time, it hasn't been the hardest for me. I know others have been craving social a lot more than me.
Yeah. I've been spending a lot of time by myself when I have been able to get out. Like I'm going fishing by myself. I'm going to film YouTube videos by myself, and I'm spending an extended period of time just hanging out and enjoying that time alone. And I think as an introvert, because I am very introverted, and I have learned to not be introverted in certain aspects of my life, but spending so much time at home is not the issue. It's that I'm not getting the release that I need as an introvert, where I need time alone. I need to be in my own thoughts and not be distracted with conversation. Like I more often than not would rather have zero conversation and just be next to my wife than sit and talk to her and have like full on conversation.
Listen, you're talking to the right guy. I completely understand it. Like you have no idea. I so understand what you're saying. And the thing that's hard for people to grasp with me is that I have I don't have an ounce of being shy inside of me. Like I'm not a shy person at all. Like I'll go up to people and talk. And
being introverted is not being shy.
Exactly, but I look like I'm super extroverted. But the reality is, if I have an evening alone at home, I'm never calling any friends. That's when you're like, okay, like that in a sense. Not that I don't want to see my friends or anything like that. It's just I really appreciate being alone in my thoughts, like you said, and more importantly, I bet you probably do the same, because a lot of introverted people do the same. A lot of people in general do the same. I work things out. Like I'm having conversations with myself inside my head. Like I'm just working ideas out. Like it, and that to me is quite therapeutical.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
In a lot of ways, you get to go, and you were saying with the deal with your wife and all that. See, the deal with my wife and the kids and camping and all that kind of stuff, for me, it's a little different. So I do manage to get away for one major trip per season.
Okay.
With just adults or on my own.
Okay.
But the rest of the time, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you go out on the weekend, you bring the kids. So that's also why I kind of shifted gear a lot into bike packing and canoe camping.
Gotcha.
As well.
Does your wife drive getting out as a family, or is it she enjoys it, but you are the one that's initiating getting out?
So she loves the outdoors, but everything in small scale compared to what I do. So for me, to go for a day hike, it's not that motivating to me. Mind you, if I lived in Utah and I could have some crazy views, it'd be different, most likely, right? Or if I lived in the Adirondacks, I'd do a high peak every weekend. I wouldn't mind. Like I don't need to sleep necessarily on the mountain. I like doing that, but so for me, hiking in general, just on its own, not the thing I prefer. If you tell me let's go trail running and let's go put in 12 miles, that I'm down for, like, any day, right? So it's
Gotcha.
so it's everything to scale with her, right? So if I'm like, let's go on a canoe camping trip, I definitely want to do some things that are technical where it's like, well, let's just cross the lake, set up camp, and hang out, right? So she enjoys going outside. She just doesn't have the same craving for the adventure, if that makes sense. And the deal too is when she comes, I do mostly everything. It's for her. I mean, like, let's be honest, like, moms work pretty hard at home in general. Like, it's not. So when she comes camping, it's holidays. So she's like, I'll come and I'll enjoy myself, but I don't want to be cooking. I don't want to deal. You know what I mean? So I take care of a lot of that, and I'm always super happy to do it. One of the things, and I don't know if you're like this, but I love bringing people. That's why I love doing it with the kids, and I bring my nephews and other their kids' friends. I love bringing people and introducing people to the outdoor. And giving them the best experience of their lives, like just where they just sat back and enjoyed.
Yeah, and this is a little bit off topic, but I have the opportunity to take people backpacking because I teach backpacking at the university. And that is where I get my fulfillment of taking new people into the backcountry. Outside of that, I don't do that too often, but back to like the family unit, I'm a little bit different, and everybody's like family structure is unique, and
of course,
it's your own. But I feel like very blessed to have a wife that she often is the one that is saying, hey, let's go camping next weekend. I need to go camping. And cool. So like this trip we're going on in this weekend, she's like, we're going camping. And I'm the one that's more hesitant to like, I don't know, the whole COVID thing, maybe we should. She's like, we're going camping.
Nice. Very nice. No, for us, you know, it's and my wife, the bugs is really hard on her. Like, she gets bitten alive. I don't get bitten barely at all. So I don't know why, but for me, and both of my kids, Charlotte doesn't get bit at all. Rosie gets destroyed. So I have to, and a huge tip for the parents at home who are looking, you know, into getting their kids out in the outdoor, managing the bugs is a huge concern. Not as much for diseases and all that, mind you. You know, the Northeast with the ticks, it's certainly, I never go to sleep without doing a full tick check on my kids. Every time. It's just part of, and I have the little tick remover thing too in my first aid kit. And if you do find a tick, more importantly, you got to keep it to get it analyzed.
Right.
So when you remove it, but regardless of the diseases, I once told Rosie she needed to go just pee. So I said, just step out of the tent, go pee and come back. Within 8 seconds, I swear to God, Devin, she came back with maybe 25 mosquito bites on her. And a child that's like 6 years old can't handle that at night. Like,
no,
it's just they cannot.
Yeah. So
bug management is like, out of all the things you got to worry about when you go out with your kids. I don't know how bugs are. I mean, you're in the desert, so maybe it's a bit different. But for us, like, especially in May, June, it's like it's the first thing you got to worry about. As soon as you stop moving, is everybody covered for bugs? Because you're that night we're talking, I had to give her Benadryl and Advil to just kind of get her to go to sleep, because I mean, she was so young, and I mean, like, for me, I didn't think of it. I never get bit. I barely ever get bitten. Yeah. For whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, the bugs in the desert are a little bit different. We, like, right now would have little tiny, like, black gnats, little biting flies that they'll just, like, burrow into your skin, and you don't notice them biting you at all until like a couple days later, when you've got these big welts and bites from them, and they're like pussy, and we don't need to talk about that. But like, mosquitoes are an issue, and we just, because we know that like permethrin you could spray on your kids' clothes and it would be fine, but Picardin is a very safe bug repellent to use on kids.
Which one is it? Picardin?
Picardin.
Picardin. Yeah. Okay. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, so it's
thing...
usually in like a lotion form. Sawyer has it, but there's several brands, but it's not a deadly, for lack of a better word, chemical like DEET. DEET is.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to look into that because I don't know this one particular. So in particular, so thank you. For us, one of the problem is permethrin is illegal in Canada. I can't purchase it.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. Well, I say it's illegal. It's not like it's not like drugs.
It's just not available.
Like it's just not. It's not an approved product.
Huh.
So I don't know if I think it's Health Canada that's holding this back because I was doing some research. So every time I go to the state, I usually stop at a Walmart and I buy a couple of bottles and I bring it back. So this way I can have it because it is a huge, it helps a lot. But so for me, I completely agree with you that DEET is just not an ideal kind of thing to lather all over your body, especially as a young kid. Mm-hmm. But the flip side to this, to me, the way I looked at it is like, okay, there's 365 days in a year. Let's say we spend 20 to 30 of those days in the backcountry. I mean, like the percentage of how much DEET I'm putting on my kids as a lifetime is so small compared to all the rest of the time they don't get it.
Yeah.
After that one experience with Rosie, I don't take the chances. For
That's
us,
fair.
it's called Great Outdoors. And it's called it used to be called the Watkins, but it's a cream. In my opinion, the lotions are definitely the best. The sprays don't work the same.
I agree.
But it's a DEET based lotion, and it works really well. And honestly, for like and 30 days for the kids out in the backcountry, for me that I do a lot, that's a big year.
It really is
for the kids to
I agree.
So really like. So I'm not too concerned. Some people at first like, dude, you're putting that on your kids. I'm like, dude, we spend like. Especially when they were that young, like 4, 5, 6, like.
Yeah, and you can make the argument of like how much sugar are your kids eating, like how much more
how
bad
much
for that
pollution they're not breathing in right now. Right. So yeah, you're absolutely.
It's like when
right.
people say soda kills you. Well, everything does. Like don't use it as an argument if you don't have anything to really back up your argument that is valid and worth having an argument of.
For sure. That's a big thing. A thing that you talk a lot about, and I find this so fascinating because you're the only other guy other than me that I know that even knows that book exists, is The Last Child in the Wood from Mr. Rick Louv. And it's kind of funny, though, because for you, from my understanding, is you were introduced to that book when you were in college, I believe. I was introduced to that book when I was about 18, and where I found my love for the outdoors, and more importantly, to teach it and to bring people along, where I just fell in love with that, is I worked for the Tim Hortons Children Foundation, which is an overnight camp that I would spend all my summers out there and as a camp counselor, and then I became like a resource staff over time. And we would have kids. The foundation is basically separated from the regular Tim Hortons restaurants that you might be aware of. I don't know if you guys have any in Utah.
No.
Best coffee in town, but
nope. We're a Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks.
But Tim Hortons is obviously a big staple of Canada in general. But there is one, and I meant to talk about this with Jeremiah and John and the last 2 weeks, the last 2 podcasts, because they do have a camp in Kentucky. So that's the only American, it's the only American camp. But basically every year, each franchise has to send a boy. Well, they don't have to, but it's kind of frowned upon if you don't, because it's like nationwide. But they send a boy and a girl to an overnight camp. And they sponsor the kids to go, so we would get like very underprivileged kids to come to camp and have this experience, right? And we would go canoe camping with them and climbing. There's a climbing tower and all that kind of stuff. And I was introduced by Anik, our camp director at the time, by this book, because I was going to go into university and like kids. It's called psychoeducation, so it's like social work and psychology put together. I was going to go to university into this to do some intervention with kids and all that. And she said, you should really read that book. Now, the problem when she gave me that book is I was 18 years old and I had an attention span of like a 2-year-old. And it's as great of a book as it is. It's a textbook.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
I think I talked about this in my podcast episode. It's not an easy read.
It's not. It has so much truth to it, but it's a very dry read. But I don't think that Richard Louv, the author, was trying to make a novel out of this.
No,
I think he's just trying to report
He's trying to report the facts,
right?
and he's trying to report not only the research, but his opinion and his theory on this whole mindset of last child in the woods. And
correct.
Yeah.
But it's so anyways, when I was 18, I didn't end up reading it because it was too dry for me. And about 5 years ago, I picked it up again and I plowed through it. And it's just kind of neat because, you know, you were saying earlier for you get to bring a couple of people from the college where you teach. For me, my love of the outdoors, I love teaching my kids this and my nephews. And one thing that I've learned firsthand by working with kids out in the outdoors for like 5 years, that whole period of my life between 18 and 23, and what I'm learning today and what I've learned 5 years ago when I read the book and kind of pieced everything together, my experience and the theory kind of meshed together, is all the benefits that the kids get from that.
Yeah.
Like self-confidence, creativity, problem solving. And it's just the benefits that the kids get from just being out in unstructured play in the outdoors, and even better if you have the opportunity to spend multiple days where you're remote. And you can really see the kids grow into this. Like a kid who, at camp, I've seen it 1,000 times, a kid who was terrified of heights, who has managed to climb to the top of the tower.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that,
yeah,
the life lesson.
Well, and it fits the whole. For a long time, I had considered going into recreational therapy and being a recreational therapist, and I decided based off of the type of personality that I have that would not be the right line of work for me. But that mindset of maybe pursuing that aspect or that line of work was derivative from reading that book and seeing what wilderness therapy does for at-risk youth, and how much just being in the outdoors away from the things that we are bombarded with in the entertainment world, in just watching other people in their lives. When subconsciously you are around so many people all the time, and you are influenced by what everybody else is doing just organically. And when you remove yourself from that and you are within forest therapy, if you want to call it that, you go back to a natural state, and your mind goes to a natural state, and you reset, and you realize your brain starts to change. And I think that is one of the, like Knowles or Outward Bound, for example, they're doing 2 week to 30 day experiences with people, and who that person is on day 1 versus who that person is on day 30, they're completely different. And of course, I mean, tying that back into that book, Last Child in the Woods, that's the reason, and we spend so much time talking about family and kids, that is the reason that I drive spending time outdoors with my kids as much as possible, because I talked about this Everybody should go listen to this podcast episode that I did.
100%. Which episode is it?
It's titled "Why Yours in parentheses Why Your Kids Need Nature."
It's a great episode, and the whole podcast in general. But the episode is rather very interesting.
And in that episode, I talk about the level of confidence that I have seen my own kids achieve in simple things outdoors versus sitting at the table and whining about how difficult it is to color a picture, and like that's an issue for them. But doing these things out camping as a family, that is way more difficult and requires way more attention and way more skill, they're able to accomplish, and their confidence level is just like maximized because of what being in wild spaces provides.
You said something interesting going back to your natural state, and it's hard to say what it is and put it into words. I've been desperately trying. A lot of people are asking me why do you go out in the mountains at -40? Why do you there's and I know that some of these are, you don't have to go that extreme, and not that it's that extreme either. I don't. Yeah. I'm just saying you don't have to push the boundaries that much to get that feeling, and it's a little bit or quite a bit woohoo because it's not super scientifically based yet, or we don't really know, but like there's an energy that Mother Earth provides when you go back to a little bit like there are places like, I don't know, like well, you were mentioning you were a Christian before, so I don't know if you had the opportunity, like I had the opportunity to go to the Vatican, for example, and when you walk in the Vatican, regardless if you're Christian or not, there is a history here. Like when I walked, same thing in the Colosseum in Rome as well.
The Colosseum.
Okay, sorry, French in me just came right out. When I walked inside of it, there's a massive amount of energy of whatever it is, and same thing when you go back to the in the backcountry in the woods. There's an energy there that's undisputable. Like I can't explain it, but the difference between all of these places is that it seems to be probably one of the purest energy that you'll ever be able to refill your soul with, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Not to go too deep here, but it's like this it's like the untouched pure energy of our existence. It belongs there because that's where we came from. So you go back there and you experience these moments, then all of a sudden you're not worried about your text messages, your emails. And it might take a day or two depending how deep you are in your regular life and how often you go for you to really kind of let go. But like if you go on a backpacking trip and day 2, so you go for 4 days, let's say. Okay, 3 days, 4 days. Day 2 rains for 12 hours on you. From sun up to sundown, it rains on you, right? We've all experienced this. And it rains on you the entire time. You just have so much of a better understanding of how weak you are as a human being when you live an experience like that, and how fragile we are, and how important that it is that we take care of each other, that we work as communities to survive. And right now we're in a situation where we're very much in that situation with the COVID-19. Yeah. And then you go in the woods, and all you got to worry about when you're out there, when you get stuck in a situation like this, is shelter, food, and wait it out, and making sure that your party is safe as well. How primal is that? Like this is what human beings have done for hundreds of thousands of years until the last even if it was the last 500 years. Like it's so there's an energy that I can't explain, that if you allow yourself to refill, that refills your soul, that you get so much out of. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to teach the kids, that how crazy the world may become and how complicated things are. Really, the things that you truly need to be happy and to live and survive are quite simple.
Yeah. Yeah. No, as you're explaining all of that, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, yeah, those days that you've got a crazy storm that comes through and you're just hunkered down in your tent. Or like, for example, last year in September, I took students out on a backpacking trip, and we had weather come in that was not anticipated. We weren't planning on that weather being what we were going to experience. But all 8 of us, I think there were 8 of us, 9 of us, we had this hailstorm. Like, we literally packed up camp, had backpacks totally packed, and we started walking. We got not 30 seconds after putting packs on. I looked out over the lake that we were camped next to, and you just saw the storm moving across the lake. Like, you saw the hail hitting the water, and I just yelled at all the students, and was like, here it comes, like, get your rain gear on now and get under a tree. But so when we get through that aspect of the experience, and then it was the next 4 miles of hiking of just being soaked to the core getting back to the cars. And there was a point that we had 2 slower students that they weren't injured or anything. They just hiked slower. And I had the class stop and wait, and we were at a junction, and it was like the last spot really to stop before you started going up and you climb over this pass, and it was a lightning storm. So I'm sitting here going through like risk management stuff in my head as a teacher, as an instructor.
How much is this going to cost me?
Yeah, but what I'm getting at, and the point I'm trying to make, is we as a group waited for these other 2 students to come by literally standing under these 2 pine trees to just try to take shelter. And that 15-20 minutes or so that we stood there waiting for the other students to show up was probably one of the most, I'm trying to like avoid the cliche sayings of like it was therapeutic or it was this incredible, but the inability to explain what was happening mentally inside everybody at that moment of things that did not need to be said, but we were all on the same page of what we were experiencing was amazing.
Right?
Even though the conditions were not ideal, we were cold, we were wet, we were not having a good time. Like, this is the epitome of type 2 fun.
Of course.
Yeah. And that experience is what you, like, I think everybody who goes into the backcountry, once you have developed and been able to obtain a level of experience that allows you to make smart decisions, should, and to be able to know how to make smart decisions and weigh differences in how you make and decide what to do when things happen the way that they do. But everybody should be seeking type 2 opportunities in the backcountry, because those are the opportunities that are going to teach you the most about who you are as a person, what the backcountry and being in the wilderness teaches you mentally, spiritually, and physically. Like, if you are not pushing yourself into type 2 experiences, then, I mean, this isn't the only way to have the experiences, but I think the best learning and teaching opportunities for yourself as a person come through those type 2 fun experiences. And that even goes back to, those are the experiences that bring you back into that natural state where
100%.
I just hiked a brutal 8 miles with 3,500 feet of elevation gain and loss, it's hot, I'm sweaty, I'm hungry, and that moment that you finally lay down in your tent, snuggled in your sleeping bag, you start thinking. Like, I just had a type 2 experience. I'm now thinking about that, and I'm processing it. Nature is now bringing me back to my natural state.
To the reality of what it is. That's just what it is. No, yeah. Man, you and I are writing the same line here. I am constantly trying to ride the line of type 2 fun just before you tip into type 3. Like and that's when experience, like you said, comes in.
Yes,
where you can make the right decision where this is still great and not dangerous, but it's still type 2 fun, right?
Right. You're familiar with the concept of flow state, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So type 2 fun to me is flow state.
Fair enough.
And if you have pushed yourself into type 3 fun, you are no longer in a flow state.
That is such a good way to put it.
Within the realm of
course.
Because flow state, you've got this sucks. I mean, that's not like the legitimate word, but like your level of enjoyment versus the amount of like.
What ends up happening as well is that's such a good way to. I never thought of it like flow state is type 2 fun. When you get into those situations, and I'll just speak to my last ascent of Mount Haystack last winter in the Adirondacks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a video on the channel about it if people are interested. But when we cleared the tree line and pushed for the summit and back, that's when it got serious. Like that's when it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And you compared it to flow state, and when I came back down, I barely was able to take any footage on the mountain. It was too technical. Like at some point, I'm out there. For me, I love bringing the crowd along and making YouTube videos for me because it's great memories, and I get to show it with all of my people. But I also like to hopefully teach something and provide entertainment for people, but I'm not going to kill myself for a shot. I just will never do that. I don't need that, right? 100%. So I come back down and I talk to the camera. It's like, man, I barely took any shots. I'm sorry. It's just too crazy. But to go back to your flow state, when you're out there and I'm making every step has its purpose. The funny thing is that when you've prepared for these moments, when you've trained, because I'm a firm believer that we should, I train a decent amount at home so that when I go out, at least I don't have to worry about my physical fitness level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And training hard at home, to me, it's a daily mental struggle because I hate training just as much as anyone else. But that struggle of just saying, no, I'm going to do it. When I'm out there, it's a little easier as well. But the point is, if you've come prepared to the trip and to be faced with the situations that you might be faced in, when you get into that type 2 fun, and that's when the flow comes around, you're absolutely right. Like a true flow state, you're not thinking of executing. You're just you just are in the moment of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
100%.
we've had such a cool experience on that mountain, and not a lot of people know the story of it for the folks at home, but we ended up being 3 parties that summited that day. So there was me and my 3 buddies.
Okay.
We were a party of 4, and then there were 2 older gentlemen, probably 60-year-old and 50 years old, I would say.
Okay.
And that was a party, and there's another older gentleman that I believe was about 55. Okay, on his own, and we're all going up to Haystack Mountain. And we all meet up along the way, and we had to do an emergency stop because I frostbitten my toes, not this winter, last winter, so hard that I lost feeling of 6 of my toes for over 6 months.
Holy
so for
cow.
me, it's like I was feeling the cold. I'm like, guys, we have to stop. I have to warm up my toes. I started cold. I made a bad decision when I left. Anyway, so point is, I had to stop. So we stopped. That's when the 2 parties kind of caught up to us. and it was unbroken trail, and you're talking like upstate New York unbroken trail in snow. the tags, their tags are usually 7 feet in the air, and now they're buried under snow. Wow. Right? Like when you're trying to hike, and you're trying to find the trail, and it's kind of funny in the wintertime. Usually it's obvious where the trail is in the summertime because people walk so much. There's, it's obvious. Yeah. Like the trees are broken. There's no twigs there. But when there's 7 feet of snow, you're above that. So now you constantly go off trail in the mountain.
That's crazy.
Anyways, short story. The 3 guys are there, and we're constantly rotating who's getting to break the trail, who's coming back, and just kind of like, sharing that aspect. And I ended up breaking a decent amount of the trail, especially for the last push. And we got to the above tree line, and there was a false summit, and then there was a summit, so little haystack and haystack. And we all fell into a flow state. So you're talking about 7 people, 4 of which are fairly close, like pretty darn close to each other, 2 that are close to each other, and 1 that's solo. Everybody, because we all had the experience, fell into this perfect rhythm of, okay, this only will happen if we work together, number 1. We're only making it up there if we work together. And we have to be smart. So on a mountain above tree line, when you're on a ridge, especially when it's windy the way it was, and when you have to put in your full technical crampons, you never want to be too close to the person at the front of you, but you also never want to be too far from the person behind you, and everybody kind of hikes different speed.
Right.
And it's one of those things where, because of the wind, if I fall and I tumble down, there is no way, first of all, you know where I'm at, because you're not going to see a trail of snow. It's all ice. It's just a big cap of ice. And there's no way I can scream loud enough above the wind. Right. So it's kind of a lost situation. So the ethics on the mountain would be that you always hike so that you can see the guy in front of you, and you always hike so you can see the guy behind you. And you're constantly checking in case, the guy behind me is not there anymore. I'll wait 30 seconds, see if he makes it above maybe a little hump.
Yeah.
And if you do go above a hump, you wait at the top of the hump, because you don't want to lose sight of that person, because you never know when they might go, right? And it's kind of funny because one guy, Pierre, in our party, had an experience with one of the gentlemen where we all fell into that line. Nobody talked. It just happened. Flow state. Everybody just knew what they were doing. And then Pierre had a bit of I don't want to say a weak moment, but had a bit of a brain fart where he was just about to go, and the older guy's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then he just looks behind, and Pierre's like, "Oh, you're right. Sorry." Like he was in his own mind, right? Yeah. But at the same time, when he told me the story, I'm like, dude, we all did this. Nobody had to talk to each other. Yeah. How freaking cool of an experience is that?
And that, I think, we subconsciously don't recognize that it's happening because we're focused on, I mean, honestly, type 2 fun in the moment is not fun. Like you're not enjoying yourself, and you are so focused on, this sucks. I'm not having a good time right now. Like I hurt, I'm tired. And I think often when we talk about flow state, we're talking about, or we have this mindset of that it's very quick and it's accelerated, and it's like, no, it can be,
no.
It's a mindset. I'm in this state of mind that I'm just there, I'm present, and I'm executing what is taking place. And I think that happens more often when you are with people that have the same skill set and the same experience levels than if you are, say, a guide, for example. Your mind's
somewhere
you're not
else.
hitting that flow state very often when you're in guide mode, because
you got to cater to other people.
You're catering to other people too much, and you are facilitating in some ways. You don't want to put people in a type 2 fun situation.
Not yet.
If you do that as a guide without preparing people for that experience, you are creating an opportunity in that person's mind for them to say, I don't want to do this again, because they don't
Absolutely.
know how to process it. They don't know how to take what they're experiencing and say, this, after I get through it, is going to turn into a positive memory. It's something that I'm going to talk about. It's going to be that story that you tell around the campfire.
Well, and one of the things that I've learned in my journey at camp is that every night at camp with your cabin group, you would have debrief sessions with the kids. And that's when I found out that's a huge part of processing those hardships, the tough moments. You know, we spent an hour encouraging that one kid trying to go up the wall, for example. And then if you just ended there, there's not enough information to fully grasp what actually happened.
Yeah.
So, man, Devin, what a great way to put an end to this. We're an hour and a half in. You and I never met before. This is the first time we talk, quote unquote, face to face. I really, really enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Likewise, man.
Absolutely. This is awesome.
Yeah, really, really good time.
Please tell all the folks at home where they can find you and everything that you do, because you are definitely one of the pillars in the outdoor world. I have on YouTube for sure, man. And I have way more other questions, but we're, like I said, already going on to an hour and a half, so I'll let you go.
We'll have to do it again. We'll just have to do another
We'll have to
episode.
do it again because, anyways, I'll keep it for next time, but we'll have to do it again.
Yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find you. Tell them everything that you do so that they can find you. You are a phenomenal resource online, so go right ahead.
I appreciate that, man. So podcast is the Backpacking Experience. And you can find that anywhere that podcasts can be found. And then Backcountry Exposure on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, backcountryexposure.com, which I'm not very active on updating my website, but I'm very active on Instagram, so that is a good place to see what I'm like constantly doing, gear that I'm testing, trips that I'm going on, more behind the scenes kind of stuff, and a little bit of family life, which I like to share as well. So Backcountry Exposure, just all over.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Devin. Have a good one.
Yeah, man.
Cheers.
Likewise.